koutou. Thank you for joining us. So if you can just put your name and your location and what systems you're hoping to shift in the chat would be fantastic. We'll just wait a couple of minutes for the rest of the attendees to join this call. We'll give it one more minute. Again, if you could actually just put your name and your location and what systems you're hoping to change or shift in the chat would be fantastic. Oh, they're all coming through, which is awesome. Thank you, Jade, for your assistance. It's got a few more filtering through. Oh, we've got Jess, my mangawhai, awesome. Mostly organisational workplace and public, private and public. Got Anjum from Kaikōrero, awesome Anjum, who is also one of our SASS members. Oh, cool. Malu, I've got Ash from Otepoti. I think it's cold down there at the moment. Awesome. Right, fantastic. I think we'll make a start if you like. Tēnā koutou katoa, everyone. Talofa lava. Alo ingo o Lautalie Schmidt-Geen. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you for the opportunity. I greet you with respect to our gathering. I come to you from Va'a Collective, and I'm also based in Army Bay, Whangaparoa. I'm also a proud member of the wonderful wahine of SASS, Systems Change, Advocacy Support and Solidarity team. I will share more about the team shortly, but this is the fifth and final pathway in our lunchtime learning series, and it's the final one for this year. We've been fortunate to have wonderful panel speakers who have imparted a wealth of their knowledge and expertise. We are very excited to have our esteemed panel of speakers today, Malu, Red, Matariki, who will share their stories and expertise. But before we get into it all, let's start with our karakia. For international guests, karakia are Māori incantations and prayer used to invoke spiritual guidance and protection for our session today. This is actually one of my favourite karakia, so let us begin. Te kuia te wairoa ke rere ki ngā taumata, hai arahi I a tātou mahi, me te tātou whai I ngā tikanga a rātou mā. Ki mau ke ita, ke kore a ingaro, ke pupuri, ke whakamoa, ke tina huie, takie. Just move on to the next slide. Okay, for those of you who are new to the webinar series, here is the agenda for today's call. We will share with you a bit about the SASS team, and we'll be introducing our panel speakers and Q&A, and we'll wrap up at 1 p.m. How the Zoom kōrero is going to work. This Zoom meeting will be recorded and sent out via email, and our webinars are also posted on YouTube, but we'll share those links with you also. Please feel free, please keep yourself on mute and please use the chat function to comment. We'd love to see your smiling faces, so please turn your video on if you feel comfortable to. And if you haven't already done so, please introduce yourself in the chat with your name, your location, and what system you're hoping to change or shift. A little bit about the SASS Wahine. The SASS Wahine came together in 2022 and is committed to fostering an environment where collective wisdom flourishes. By valuing the diverse experience of its members, the group ensures that each voice is heard and each perspective is respected. This approach not only strengthens individuals' capacities, but also enriches the collective understanding of systems change. We meet once a month for our gatherings, and they're more than just meetings. They're actually a sanctuary for thoughtful dialogue and mutual support. We aim to create a network that thrives on collaboration and shared learning. The paper Voices from the Frontlines, launched in April 2023, is a testament to our dedication, encapsulating the insights and strategies forged in our collective journey. As we continue to grow, we remain dedicated to the principles of Te Tiriti o Waitangi, ensuring that our efforts are rooted in respect, equity, and community. This commitment guides us as we explore new pathways and innovative approaches to systemic change. Storm will share a link in the chat to our resources file, which includes links to the Voices from the Frontlines file and other systems change links. The paper's information is organised into 5 pathways with clear steps for contributing to an inclusive future. Today we are sharing pathway 5, encourage experimentation and amplify transformation. What is it all about? We all know that systems change is just too big and can be too complex to do alone. It requires working together, and that means all of us, communities, systems change practitioners, funders, government, media, and passionate individuals. Even more importantly, systems change needs to be led by the communities that we serve. Pathway 5 challenges us to embrace the unpredictable nature of innovation. To truly amplify transformation, we must cultivate a culture where experimentation is encouraged and the inevitable failures are seen as valuable learning opportunities rather than setbacks. This mindset requires robust support structures and a willingness to share both our successes and our missteps openly. We build resilience and adaptability within our systems and making them more responsive to the needs of the communities we serve. It's about fostering a spirit of collaboration where diverse perspectives are not just welcome but actively sought out, and where the collective wisdom of the community drives the innovation process. To support this, we need to invest in capacity building and provide practitioners with the tools and resources they need to experiment confidently and effectively. This includes access to the training, mentorship, and platforms for sharing knowledge and experiences. By embedding these principles into our daily practices, we can accelerate the pace of change and move closely to achieving a more equitable and connected future. On to our next slide. And for our change practitioners, we need to role model. We need to share templates and tools and methods of systems change. We need to tell our stories as well. For these goals to be realised, we must foster a culture that embraces risks and acknowledges that failure is an integral part of the learning process. It's through trial and error that truly innovations emerge, and thus we must encourage practitioners to venture beyond their comfort zones without fear or reprisal. Creating safe spaces for experimentation can empower individuals to develop and test new approaches, leading to breakthroughs that might not have been possible under more rigid structures. By celebrating both successes and failures, we can build a resilient ecosystem that is better equipped to face future challenges. To further this cause, it is essential to establish a network of support that includes not only funding and resources, but also emotional and moral encouragement. Champions of change should be recognised and celebrated, and their stories should be amplified to inspire others to take bold steps. In addition, establishing feedback loops where continuous learning and adjustment are part of the norm and can help ensure that initiatives remain relevant and effective. This approach allows for constant refinement and adaptation, making systems more responsive to the evolving needs of communities we serve. Ultimately, by embedding these practices into the core of our work, we can create more of a dynamic and responsive framework for systems change, one that is capable of driving meaningful and lasting transformation. For our funders, we need to recognise that community-led systems work requires taking educated guesses and trying different approaches, acknowledging that not everything will work as planned. And we need to encourage this by providing seed funding, which is really important for our organisations, for these experimental initiatives, and when in doubt, support the endeavour to foster innovative and learning. Offer multi-year support for systems change initiatives as well, understanding that success is not often immediate. Sustainable progress informed by community feedback necessitates a long-term commitment, potentially spanning 20 to 30 years, and to fully realise the impact of initiatives we initiate. We've had funders from our previous webinars where they've discussed the importance of flexibility and sustained commitment in driving large-scale change. Their insights emphasise the real transformation is often a marathon and not a sprint. Successful examples of community-led initiatives have shown that embracing experimentation and learning from failures can lead to innovative solutions and stronger, more resilient systems. And media can play a crucial role in amplifying our stories, celebrating our successes and honouring the lessons learned. Wow, now on to the exciting part of this presentation and why you're all here today. It's an honour to have our amazing speakers join us today, and I've had the pleasure of working with both Malu and Matariki, and I look forward to working with you, Red, in the future too. So without further ado, please let me introduce you to our amazing speakers who are working in these systems change spaces, where they will share their stories and wisdom about our theme today. Encourage experimentation and amplify transformation in our communities and how it looks for them. Our first speaker is Malo-Fuiava, who has spent her life in the charitable sector that started in social enterprise before moving to the youth cancer sector, working in marketing, communications and fundraising. In 2018, she made the move to the migrant and refugee sector using her skills and experience at Aotearoa, previously called Auckland Regional Migrant Services. As a Mars Com manager, she chaired the committee to change the name, supporting the organisation alongside the CEO, board and staff to shift from service delivery to systems change. Currently, she is a practice and development manager overseeing systems change practice in the organisation across staff delivering initiatives. Malu started her systems change journey 5 years ago and is passionate about making a positive difference that utilises her marketing and communication skills to connect communities and opportunities that spark transformation systems change. And our second speaker is Nicholson. Unfortunately, is a long-suffering Warriors fan. I've got my Warriors flag up. Red is also a recovering high school teacher and a proud disabled person with a background in education and creative sectors. Red's work is driven by a vision for an equitable Aotearoa underpinned by Te Tiriti, where all are valued and resourced to live extraordinary lives. He works as an executive director at the D-List, which is on a mission to grow disabled storytelling, community and creativity. Red, his wife and 3 children live in West Auckland. And lastly, our third speaker is Erin Matariki Carr from Ngāi Tūhoi, Ngāti Awa and Pākehā descent, lives in her traditional homelands in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and works in law and policy with a focus on the interface between Indigenous and Western legal systems and methodologies. Matariki is a researcher and facilitator focusing on the constitutional transformational movement in Aotearoa with a number of other teams, including as a research scholar at the University of Auckland School, a project lead at River Aotearoa Charitable Trust, and a facilitator with Tumanako Consultants. And Matariki forgot to mention she's also a member of the SASS team as well. So I would now like to pass on the roku to Malu, who will now introduce herself. Take it away, Malu.
Thanks, Lautalie. Salamaruz behai e moa na si le vinga ma le whaftai le atua ono o tata au le nei faugi e le manuia ma le langi e mama whaftai tele mo le avanoa o mawhai ai o na tulai i au tō luma I le nei tai au. Tēnā koutou katoa no hao ko moana nui kiwa taku moana, ko Hamoa taku whenua, no Tamaki Makaurau ahau ko Tolotea Roach, rawa ko Lea Lava a Malo, o Kumatua o le nuulota mai, sa moa salani whalea lii, sa napu maapia, o le nuulotina, o luatunu masina monga, ko Bezard, toku horangatira, ko Anita, toku tamahine, ko Malo-Fuiava, Malo-Fuiava, toku ingoa. I went through that very fast, so I appreciate it. But it basically I acknowledged in my mother tongue, Samoan. Thanks for this opportunity. Acknowledging God in my life and in this meeting, and then also a bit about where I've come from, Samoan descent, and also my family. Hello. I think I cut out a little bit there. And I acknowledged my family, my partner, and my child in my pepeha. My name is Malu, everybody, as you can see by my thing. And I think this is probably a quick snapshot into, I guess, my village in terms of who I am and how I've been grown up to be, very traditional in terms of the E Whakasa Church out in Grey Lynn, and then kind of my journey through Belong and through Canteen in that youth space. Here's some of the youth workers I got to work with, and also a little bit of what Lautalie talked about in terms of social enterprise and my journey in that space. But yeah, I'm just so blessed to have throughout my life and even today bunch of people that have helped shape me and kind of guided me in this piece of work. And I guess the next slide, it speaks to my journey. It speaks to this impact model that we have at Belong Aotearoa, in which the journey of migrants and in fact former refugees is not one that's straightforward. It comes with many barriers, and some of that journey speaks to my own family's journey, and I definitely don't feel the brunt of it, thanks to kind of my great-great-grandparents making the decision to leave Samoa many years ago, so that we could have a better life, I guess, for what they wanted. So whilst I still face kind of barriers, it's definitely not to what they did. And I think the key point here in terms of what led me to Belong is that many still face this many years later. And so what needs, and I think that's what drew me to Belong in terms of what more can we do, looking at not just the symptoms of the challenges and the disparities that we see. What can we do at a different level, at a systems change level, to kind of address these challenges that we face today? The next slide, Lautalie. And that kind of shapes a little bit of why I'm here today. And whilst I've been in the space maybe 5 years, I still think I'm new to this, and so I do, as you were talking, Lautalie, I was like, yes, I don't need to talk at all now. But yeah, that's a little bit about me, and I will share more, I guess, after everyone.
Oh, okay.
Lovely to be here.
You. After lava, Malu. And now on to you, Red.
Whawhataitele lava. Kia ora tātou. kōwai au, he Pākehā ahau, no tāmaki makaurau ahau e noho ana au ki Te Aratu South. Ko Red Nicholson tōku ingoa. Massive privilege and super humbling to be on the call today alongside Malu and Matariki and yourself, Lautalie, and the whole crew. Like, honestly having massive imposter syndrome right now, so I'm just gonna keep sailing through this and hopefully we'll land in a good place, whānau. So this is a little bit about me. This is my whānau. Just on the left, my son, our oldest boy, Lachlan, was in his school's kapahaka tournament over the weekend, Te Kahu o Te Rehia out in Te Aratu, which was awesome. And in that photo on the left, which also includes my dad, we've cropped out my 3-year-old because he is our cheeky little one. His name is Cassidy. And so I've got another photo of him on the right. Him and I are actually navigating the coastal boardwalk out your way, Jade, in Hobsonville Point. So that's my whānau. We didn't grow up in West Auckland, but certainly call it home now. And it's a really cool place to be. I don't know if there are any other Westies in the chat, but yeah, sing out if you are. It's a beautiful part of Tāmaki Makaurau. Next slide, please. And this is kind of the other massive part of my work, which is our mahi. So yeah, like Lautalie has said, I work at the D List, which is kind of still a recently established charitable organization which exists to kind of shift the way Aotearoa thinks and talks about disability, moving it from kind of quite outdated and very like Western ideas of deficit and trauma and tragedy and into a space that actually reflects in more kind of authentic and congruent ways how disabled people think about ourselves. Like I'm sure everyone on this call can in some way relate to the experience of having your community and your experiences reflected in stories and media in ways that feel grossly detached from how you and your communities and your mates see yourselves. And that's very much the case for disability and disabled people. And so, yeah, I kind of see our work as reclamation, really, reclamation of the stories we tell about ourselves, reclamation of the ways in which we can gather and how we design spaces to be fully accessible and kind of ways that enable disabled people to bring out, all the amazing parts of ourselves that are so often excluded from other spaces. So that's our mahi. That's us at the Hikoi recently. First time crossing the Harbour Bridge, felt amazing. Vibes were immaculate, as the kids say. Next slide, please. So this is part of one of the things that we do is we run an online magazine, which is all about disability culture. So if you head to the dlist.co.nz, that's our website. That's kind of a big part of the mahi we do. We know that stories are a massive way we shift hearts and minds. And honestly, we talk a lot in our mahi about how as much as we want to shift the stories that are told about us, we have to start with the stories that we tell about ourselves. When that conditioning runs so deep that you find yourself kind of perpetuating and like regurgitating the same old stories because that's the only story that you felt was possible to tell about your community. And so it's a really active and quite intentional and challenging work to kind of unpick some of that stuff. Thanks to whoever it was that shouted out our newsletter. We run a weekly newsletter as well that if that's the way you like to get your dose of disability joy, as we call it, you can subscribe on our website. Next slide, please.
Oops, sorry.
I think that might be us, which is fine.
Sorry. Bit of techo issues here.
You're all good.
Okay, sorry about that. Am I
Oh
back
yeah.
one more?
And recently we're building beyond storytelling, and we finally got a really cool space in Kingsland in Tamaki, and we hosted our first community activation last weekend, which was around banner making for the Hikoi. And it was just amazing. Like, it was so cool to see the real appetite that was out there amongst whānau hauā, tangata whaikaha, disability communities to come together and to activate around things that matter to our people, right? And so, yeah, really excited to build on our storytelling work to start to bring communities together and start to create that greater sense of connection and belonging that we know is so important to people in all communities, but often in disability spaces, we don't often get the same opportunities to kind of come together in that way. So anyway, that's just an emerging part of our work. Aroha mai. Over to you, Matariki.
Actually, before we do, I just want to say, Red, I've actually checked out your website and there are some inspirational stories in there too. So I encourage everyone, and also belong Aotearoa as well, but I encourage everyone to go onto their website, please, and have a look at their stories. They're amazing. Next, Matariki.
Kia ora whānau. Thanks, Red. Thanks, Malu and Lautalie and Ngā mihi nui kia koutou. Red, our mutual friend Ramon Narayan hit me up. He goes, "You're going to be on a panel with Red? That's so cool." So that's enough of that imposter syndrome. And that goes for all of us, whānau. But I love that. Thank you. Yeah, big mihi to our SASS team as well, our radical wahine out there doing it, and to all of you who are here today. It's really lovely to be here, and I'm sitting in Tāneatua and it's a beautiful sunny day. So for those like my mate Danae, who I can see, we're kind of lapping up the sunshine here in the balcony. But yeah, kia ora tātou. My name's Erin, Matariki, Carr. Sitting here in Tāneatua, Nai tū hoi, Ngā Tiawa, Pākehā descent. I don't have a photo of my whānau, damn it, but here's some work I do. This is River Aotearoa. It's a charitable trust. We're more like a collective. We try not to be a trust so much as like an infrastructure that can just hold a collective and do the admin on the side and allow the people to be connected in itself. And one of our major mahis is, you can see it there, is where's the disrupting the false notion of human superiority over the natural world of which we are a part. And so I put in the chat there that the system I want to disrupt and change is the constitutional system here in Aotearoa. I would describe us as being in a constitutional crisis right now, which is why it's so easy for Parliament, those in Parliament right now, or those in government right now, to attack and undermine our foundational constitutional document of Te Tiriti. And just a huge mihi to everyone that went on the hikoi or supported from afar. What a massive uplifting experience that was. And I loved seeing our tangata tiriti out there with these wicked signs, acknowledging Te Tiriti and seeing it as a real beautiful positive thing. Because one of the biggest issues we have is politicians spinning it as if it's a divisive thing. But Te Tiriti o Waitangi was an invitation to share these lands together and to live together and share space together over time through generations and to be here. And, you know, you don't necessarily see sovereign people doing that all the time, do you? And I don't think we'd be doing that today in terms of, I'm not talking about Māori, but in terms of modern states in the world. So it's an invitation to share and be together, and that's what's at the heart of our constitution. And then there's this concept of tino rangatiratanga, and I would say that has already existed forever, you know, that mana motuhake, and where Te Tiriti said, come and share this land subject to tino rangatiratanga, what that upholds is the Māori worldview. And so a lot of our mahi, when we talk about the constitution or we talk about our system, is we're actually talking about two different worlds. You're talking about te ao Māori, the Māori world, and this Western world that came and sat and imposed itself right across the globe. So it came out of Western Europe. It had a violent background within Western Europe anyway, and it stretched out across Africa, across the Americas, across the Philippines, Asia, and it finally came down to Aotearoa. So that's an imposition of a worldview that comes and sits on top of it, currently imposes its power and its constitution and its laws on top of the Māori worldview here and Indigenous worldviews worldwide. And that is the false notion of human superiority over nature is intertwined. So if we go to the next slide, this is what I mean. Inherent in that Western worldview is this idea that humans are disconnected from nature and are apart from nature. And that whakaaro has a deep whakapapa. That whakaaro stretches right back to Plato and Aristotle and this concept, this philosophy of the great chain of being, that there's a hierarchy to life, and In their case, there was God and the angels, then man, then woman, then all these different types of animals, then insects, and then earth, right at the bottom of this concept of life. And it gave this shape on the left there, this triangle of hierarchy of power. Whereas in an Indigenous perspective, and actually most people on this call, it doesn't really matter where you're from, it's an ideology, right, of conceiving of ourselves as being a part of nature. And so a lot of our work is trying to dispel this illusion that the Western world is the normal way to do things and everything else is an alternative, like, oh, that's nice. How nice to know the Māori or the Samoan way to do things. But, we're just going to go with what's realistic, and that's our biggest challenges. Actually, the Western worldview comes from somewhere. It's definitely got its own particularities. And I think Indigenous knowledge and worldviews is going to save the world, and that we can all partake in that. And that's what Te Tiriti, again, as an invitation, is to be part of that. So that's one for Carl. And then the next slide is a really cool quote by Adrienne Maree Brown, plug for Adrienne Maree Brown, Emergent Strategy. We are living now inside the imagination of people who thought economic disparity and environmental destruction were acceptable costs for their power. It is our right and responsibility to write ourselves into the future. And this is, again, this transformation. We have to recognize that that way of being is not conducive to life on Earth. So I think it's kind of funny sometimes that it's just such an anomaly. And once you're kind of see it, it's hard to unsee it. And we'll just skip to the last slide so I don't take up too much more time. This is another thing to look out for, whānau. I'll spend a little bit of time here, but not too much. But this is from the Buchanan Institute, and it's also shared by Adrienne Maree Brown and her emergent strategy stuff. And it's basically a theory of change. And I chose to share this slide today because of our topic for today of experimenting. So the one thing that I'll point out, and there's a cool TED talk that you can Google after this, is there's two loops. So there's this dominant system, which I would say is dying. And because, and you can see the right wings all across the world trying desperately to get us back on track, or what is that, reclaim our country, all this sort of thing. But actually, it's in its last throes. This is late stage capitalism. And you can see the dots on there are actually people who are in different roles, who are stabilizing. That means trying to allow it to hospice, to die easily. Not a big chaotic death, but helping it to die, hospicing it. And then this new curve is this emergent system, which is really this new, there's no one mastermind who's going to transform the constitution or transform the system globally. It's all of us trying new things and walking out of the dominant system and practicing a new way of being. So whether that's you growing your mara at home, or you're setting up an organic system somewhere, or you're practicing creating new stories like Read with the D list. This is the mahi that we get to practice and trial. And through doing that mahi and rejecting that old system, we're emerging a new system. So definitely check that one out. And I think that's my last slide, and I will pass it back to the rōwhū. Kia ora tātou.
Actually, I'm going to stop sharing so I can actually see everyone's faces in that. Well, thank you so much, team. That very inspiring stories and that, and we're getting some awesome feedback in the chat comments as well. I just wanted to now go into some questions for our panel, and I will start with, apologies, why encouraging, oops, I've just got a bit of an issue here. Why is encouraging experimentation and amplifying transformation important to you and your mahi? Who would like to have a go here? And how did you get into this line of work? I know we briefly touched in some of the intros, but why is it important to encourage experimentation and amplify transformation? Matariki.
Okay, why is encouraging experimentation, amplifying
Yeah.
transformation important?
In your
Because we
mahi.
can't live in this normal. You know, we're like fish born into water, and you don't know what water is until it's pointed out to you. And that's what this Western colonized reality is like. So it's normal to have polluted waterways. You know, when you look at it, you're like, how is that normal? How has that been legal to pollute our waterways to a point where we're like arguing whether they should be wadeable or not? Like that's crazy. And so encouraging experimentation or amplifying transformation is, I think, an exercise of imagination and allowing us to see that. And you know, there's two ways, I think, if to simplify it, there's two ways to have a movement for constitutional transformation. And we need both sides of this. So there's decolonization, where you're fighting against oppressive systems to recognize your rights and to decolonize themselves. That's important. That's what our politicians are doing. That's what our lawyers and the courts are doing. But a lot of energy is focused on the system, you know, centering the system in many ways. And that's really important to minimize harm. But the other way, the other side of the movement is to restore our ways of doing things and to create new ways of doing things, like telling new stories and creating collectives where you have mutual interdependency, or restoring our laws, our tikanga, and inviting people into that. And so I think that's where we're experimenting, because we actually can't go back to 1840. And we do live in a modern state. There are 5 million of us now. There's never been this many people in Aotearoa. We're only going to grow. And so experimenting and feeling happy, like, you know, feeling encouraged to try these things. And that stuff doesn't need permission from government. You don't need some bully to go, oh yeah, we'll give you space for that. You get to just do that, you know.
Fantastic, beautiful. Red or Malu, would you like to chime in at all?
I was like, oh, that was said beautifully. Like I don't know what more I could add to that. I guess it's just what you were saying before, Lautalie, and what you touched on, Matariki, around that kind of what I heard is kind of listening to yourself and also to new communities. And so I guess it's amplifying the voices that you don't hear so that you can think of something different, and also giving yourself, and I think you talked about that kind of set space to think, which you don't get in our kind of normal Western ways. And so that's what I kind of think of when I think of encouraging experimentation and that amplifying transformation, that it ultimately means being true to ourselves and connecting, and what that means, having the space to explore that. I think that's quite key in what we try to do as well, to reconnect. But you know, it's a hard journey in a system, but it's one that needs to happen, that doesn't allow that. Red.
Awesome, thank you, Malu. Beautiful. Red, would you like to give your say?
Just building on both those awesome kōrero, I think experimentation is such a critical part of, I guess, that thing I touched on earlier, around reclamation, and in this particular context, like reclamation of agency and self-determination. Like, you know, we have a pretty ugly history in Aotearoa, which was laid bare recently with the formal apology to survivors of abuse and state care. But the last institution that kind of cared for, quote unquote, disabled people in Aotearoa closed in 2006. It wasn't even 20 years ago. Like, up until 20 years ago, we were still siloing off disabled people into large institutions because we felt like that's where people like that belonged, you know, which again stemmed from kind of Western colonial ideas of defectiveness. And so I think experimentation in a disability context is it's quite radical, because it suggests that we can be agents of change and independence and self-determination in our own lives. And I think providing space for our communities to experiment, to try things, to kind of to be active leaders of themselves is hugely radical when you consider that not even 20 years ago we were still putting people in institutions. So I think that's in our context, and that's why experimentation is so important.
Thank you everyone for your insights. Beautifully said, and some really gold nuggets in there too. Thank you. Now I've just got another question for you. What's one piece of good advice you can share about creating and sustaining systems change? I'm going to go Malu on this one first.
I think it's what your other pathways speak to, and it's just don't do it alone. I mean, find your village, find your people. And I know that you talk about silos, but you really do need to surround yourself with people who energize you and inspire you. And like meeting other people in this space and hearing kind of, the different ways that people practice is also quite inspirational and motivating when you are going up against these big systems, these big challenges that you're not alone in it, that everyone's got a piece in this journey, and that it's just a reminder that to do it together with others. And so that would be mine.
Absolutely. Better to collaborate. Red, would you like to comment?
I mean, I have like zero advice to give anyone in the space, but what I can speak to, I suppose, is the things that have enabled a kaupapa like the D-list to emerge into the world. And I really think one of the biggest enablers has been the trust of funders who have understood the systems change world. I think you touched on it in your intro, Lautalie, that those kind of multi-year funding agreements, the high trust models, the collective funding models. So, like not to do that thing that NGOs feel like we need to do sometimes, where we thank our funders at every opportunity. I'm being quite sincere in that, what our funders haven't done, for example, is impose their own set of KPIs on us, or their own strict measurements about what success looks like to them. They have trusted us to work with community to determine what success looks like for us in our mahi. And as that evolves, they've provided us with amazing opportunities, to your point, Malu, to network with other people doing similar work, to feel that sense that we're not alone in this, that there are other people in similar spaces doing similar work. I genuinely feel like the trust and belief and almost like cheerleading from the funders that we're fortunate enough to be aligned with has been a huge reason why we've been able to do the type of work that we do in the way that we do it. Because part of our work, which is kind of beneath the surface, and it's the part that people don't really see, is the capacity building piece. It's the taking time. We talk in disability spaces about crip time, which I don't have time to go into around here, but it's essentially about designing ways of working that are responsive to the needs of disabled people in whatever ways that look like for them. And so being able to work in crip time versus capitalism time to kind of help with that hospicing of quite conventional and conventional and hyper-capitalist ways of working has been essential in building trust with our communities. Because if we're we're the dealers, we're all about disability culture and disability community, but also you have to work at the speed of corporate bloody capitalist vibes, that's not going to enable that trust to be built with our community. And so, I think I know that the conversation around funding and philanthropy and NGO can be a tricky one at times. I think I'm super. It gives me real hope that the philanthropic world is really starting to understand what communities need to lead their own change.
Yeah, totally agree with that, Red. Thank you. Matariki.
Yeah, kia ora. Oh, I just love those whakaaro. And I guess the only thing I could build on that is also connecting to the whakapapa of the movement as well. Like knowing that we're part of a long line of resistance in all our different ways, from all our different backgrounds, that we actually are just here for a small period of time. And then we go back to the spiritual realm or whatever's in your guys, in your world. And so what can we offer in this time onto this altar of life, and as part of a line of those that have come before and those that will come after? And so I think that helps me, and that perspective helps me in sustaining my mahi, or my hope. I think it's probably a major thing, because Trump getting elected, all these nasty things of 2024 being the hottest year on record, all of that sort of stuff is pretty freaky when you dive into the details of it all. Genocide, and so to maintain hope, radical hope and love and radical compassion for everyone, to not get so maxed out emotionally that you don't care anymore, which is totally valid. Like I understand that, but it's just remembering all of those that came before and all of those that coming after, and that we're just part of that. So it kind of makes you smaller in a way, and it also just allows that contribution to be in balance with those things. But I find that helpful for myself.
Kia ora, that's beautiful. Okay, I've got one more question for you. And if any of the audience, if anyone wants to, has any questions, can you just put them in the chat, and I'll probably get Jay to help me out with some of those questions as well. The last question is, what's your hope for the future? I'm going to go Red first, because we had, and don't look like that, Red. Come on. What's your hope for the future?
Yeah, I mean, Matariki is right. There's plenty of, you spend half a minute on the news and there's plenty of reasons to feel pretty despondent. But to be honest, it's the kind of inherent energy and hope and joy that comes from being in spaces like this, and I'm fortunate enough to be in community spaces all the time. Like, I mean, like that diagram that you showed earlier, Matariki, like I think in many ways ideas like that give me huge hope. You don't have to spend, like for every half minute that you might spend engaged with like global politics and the dire situation that our planet is in so many ways, I think is tempered by the time we spend in community and in and just witnessing the sheer kind of relentless capacity for people to push back against those systems that we can all observe and identify and acknowledge are holding us in place. So I think that's what gives me hope. Like young people give me hope. Like, oh my gosh, I was saying to someone the other day, like, how you like for ages you just think you're like a young person, and then one day like you're the guy who's at the community workshop with like your kids and like the oldest dude in the room, and you're like, well, how did that happen? And you look around at like there are some amazing young disabled people coming through who are just like, who are not doing what I think our generation does, which is like the kind of softly, please, thank you, could I possibly, maybe, thanks so much, I'll just leave now vibes. Like these young people, like, oh my gosh, they're just bashing the door down and they will not accept anything less than like revolutionary justice. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I could never. But I am so looking forward to them being the ones in charge, So yeah, there's so much cause for hope. And it really resides in all of us, and yeah.
Beautifully said. Thank you, Red. I'm going to go Matariki, and we'll finish off with Malu.
Oh, hope for the future. Just heaps. Yeah, just like what Red was saying, our rangatahi. Kind of cracks me up how the conversation's gone from co-governance, which was a real compromise for Te Tiriti, through to like sovereign nation and seeing all of these young people wearing sovereign nation and we are the sovereign. I'm like, dude, you don't know what button you just pressed, but you reset and restarted us at a whole nother level in terms of our expectation for our rangatahi, just what Ren was saying, like their expectations. I was talking to a young woman, she's maybe 16, 17, and someone had come up to her and said, oh, what's the treaty about? And she looked at this older man and was like, you don't know? Like, just how would you not know? And her attitude and that natural thing put all the onus back on this person, whereas it's been the other way around, you know, knowing about the treaty's kind of been fringe. Nah, their expectation is catch up. So that's a huge hope. And then, you know, Moana Jackson, I have to talk about Moana Jackson too, and the mahi that he and a lot of others have set down. And one of the quotes that he often quotes is that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it arcs towards justice. That's not word for word, but that's what he says. And so there is this sense of endurance that we'll get there. So yeah, I'm excited for Aotearoa. I really think we're in a moment of transformation, and I think it's going to impact the rest of the world, and it's perfect timing, you know. I mean, it would have been great to have it a few hundred years before, but you know, like right now it makes sense. So kia ora. Malu.
Oh, kia ora. Matariki.
I'm not as fortunate as the others to be in lots of youth spaces, but I think what's probably evident is that you don't have to be to hear them as well. Like, they are making themselves known across, including in our migrant and former refugee sector, and you know, it's making space. And I think that's also like a thing on us to do as well. But even if we don't make space, they'll just make it themselves as well. So that's what I so like encouraging. I guess the hope for the future, I don't really have much to add to that. I guess in terms of this pathway around the experimentation and, you know, transformation and the long term of systems change would probably be going back to what you were talking about, Red, as well. That kind of more funders join into that that space, and that more opportunities to build that relationship happen that aren't necessarily us going into a space of, you know, can we please have your money? Can we please? And it's more of a, you know, a relationship. We all need some change to happen, and that we can help kind of facilitate that or work along, collaborate. So that's kind of what I would hope to see. Yeah.
Kia ora, Malu. Actually, Matariki, I'm going to call you back in as well. You were going to do a plug about GIF Foundation, I think it was, about what they're currently doing.
Oh, well, yeah, cool. This is for funders and for fund seekers, but there's the Gift Trust. They are setting up a fund called the Social Cohesion Fund. And what's different about it for funders, it's like a pot that different funders can put money in, or donations from people. And then there's a group that will give that money out to 4 different PO that are working towards what they call social cohesion. Is probably the new buzzword in the philanthropy space. But it's a good kaupapa, and what it's, the gap that it's filling is often funders get stuck when anything seems a little political or a little bit edgy or maybe a bit too active, or, you know, anything, which is, most of our advocacy will be like that. It could potentially cross this invisible line, which is unfair because you think about the lobbyists on the other side who have so much money pushing. So that's what the gap is that they're filling. It's a pot that creates a bit of distance, but it also is looking out for stuff. So have a look online, the Gift Trust Social Cohesion. It's not open yet, but it should be open soon. So for those of you seeking funds, just maybe have a look and talk to your teammates about it too. Yeah, that was my thanks.
Thank you for sharing that. And actually, we've got one question here from Danae. How do we move through moments of rupture and resistance within our communities when attempting experimental transformation? Oh, who'd like this one?
Yeah, I want to talk to this just briefly. Thank you for that partai, Danae, because that is within our hands as how we treat each other. And I'll just explain from my own experience of working even just within my iwi organization. we have, and it's part of like the pedagogy of the oppressed, right? And we call it lateral violence, where if you can't take on, if you've been oppressed by a group, we often take it out on each other. And so we have to be, first of all, mindful of that and of sharing space, of ego, all of that sort of stuff. But then we also have to come up with way better ways to disagree and to hold conversations and be loving and compassionate and to understand that we can't afford to throw each other out of the boat. So this whole cancel culture that we have in the movement, where we just randomly go to Instagram and like call somebody out without having any steps before that can restore or have a peaceful way to challenge an idea. I think we got to do a lot more thinking on our own holding of space. And it gives me hope because these generations, we're far more aware of our mental health, our capacities, neurodivergency, sexuality, diversity, disability, all of these things are so much more. We've got language for these things now. So I think we're actually at a stage culturally where we can really hold that for each other. And I more challenge maybe my mum's generation and above to tone in with us in that sense. And that would be my big thing. I'm seeing it a lot too. But yeah, I believe in it. I believe in us.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you, Matariki. Malu or Red, would you like to contribute?
Just to build on that, like I think it's I remember you sharing a similar whakaaro with me a little while ago, Matariki, and it really resonated. It still really does. Like I think it's such an important conversation to be having. I think on top of that, I feel it's really incumbent on us who, for those of us who work in community spaces, to be super like reflective and self-aware on when we are doing the same thing, almost like, but we're we're well-intentioned. We would never I think ill or say stink things about other kaupapa or other people, right? And I think sometimes we can kind of almost do it in spite of ourselves. So making sure that we are constantly reflecting on well, how are we actually practicing what we're preaching in this space, and how are we not kind of unintentionally repeating or perpetuating ways of thinking about our own community that we are trying to disrupt and change to begin with, because that conditioning does run real deep, and sometimes we're not even conscious of it. And so I think, for us here at the D-List, it's really, really important that we are constantly making sure, who are we designing in and who are we designing out, because it can sometimes be an unconscious process, but it's got to be super conscious. And so, just checking ourselves too. It's so easy to look elsewhere and be like, oh, that person's saying that, or that, all's doing that. But it's like, actually, how are we complicit in all of that as well? So, that's a constant work on.
Kia ora. Malu, do you want to add anything?
Not much. I just know that there is I think similar to what Matariki was saying, that kind of hopefully on the same line, an Indigenous organisation in Australia, they name the different types of roles that community could have when they don't have the language behind, and they don't have, a bit of mental health kind of upbringing, in which they name it up front. And so whenever they come into a situation that somebody's being a gatekeeper or a culture king or something like that, then they can call it out without having it to be quite confrontational, so that they can be like, oh, this is who we think you're being at this moment. How do you want to address it? And so then they're able to move past that, and it's language that they've created together around the roles that hinder a community's progress. But yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much. We're close to finishing up, so I just want to say a very special ngā mihi nui and whawhai lava to Red, Malu and Matariki for your rich kōrero. Thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge and your expertise. And I really want everyone to go in and check out their websites. They are amazing in that. And thank you for sharing that with us. Yeah, can everyone just please show some love or some, virtual pati to the team? Thank you so much. And also, I just want to mention to our funder, Weave, without their support, we could not do the work that we do of sharing our knowledge and uplifting our communities. To our SASS support crew behind the scenes, my partner, Jade, thank you, Jade, and also Storm, our comms and tech expert. This is going to be our last webinar for the year. It's been really awesome. I really enjoyed being able to share the knowledge with you, and it's going to be awesome for 2025. We hope to bring some more webinar series to you all. And I just want to say especially just a special thank you to all the attendees on the Zoom call today. I know that some of you have actually been on this journey since the very start. I think it's you, Catherine Peter. So there's a few of you who've been on this journey with us. So we really appreciate the time that you've taken out of your day. So ngā mihi nui to you all in that. So yeah, watch this space. I'm just going to quickly share our slides with you again. Okay. Sorry about this. And we will go into, I haven't quite shared the screen. Right, we're just going to go into our karakia. Yes, I'll close it off with the karakia. Sorry, we've got all our lunchtime learning recordings, as I mentioned. Storm will actually provide the links to all these, so you can always go back and have a look at the pathways. And there's some amazing speakers, especially around the funding, about addressing racism and looking at strengthening relationships. We've got amazing organisations out there doing fantastic work in the community. So we thank you so much. Okay, let us close this off. Again, thank you everyone, and whawhatai lava. I hore te marino, kia whakapapa paunami te moana, hei hurahi mā tātou I te rangi nei, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou I a tātou katoa. Share the love and kindness to our communities. They need our support more than ever. Enjoy the rest of your year, everyone, and may the systems change be with you. Manuela aso e noho oro mai. And I'll just finish it off with our final waiata. Thank you, everyone. Oh, it's not working. But thank you, everyone.